Good morning, Summa scholars. Welcome to the Daily Summa. Today is May 2nd, and the feast of Saint Athanasius, Bishop and Doctor of the Church from the 3rd century. Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning.
Back in the pottery studio. We'll have to remember on the turning of the page that this is sponsored by Spiridon Studios.
I can probably do that.
If we can see if that can happen. Gentlemen and ladies, this will probably be a short session. We've got I should probably refer to why we missed 2 days. One day, the day before yesterday, was a huge storm that whipped through the land, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all the electricity was knocked out. And also Joe, our dear friend Joe, and now your dear friend Joe, was violently ill. So the galleon was pulled. Well, it was stopped from sailing for repairs. Yesterday was the Feast of St. Joseph the Worker, and I made a decision, which Joe agreed, that in particular on the Feast of St. Joseph the Worker, we should not work. That seems to be the paradoxical, deep teaching of Catholic tradition to do such things, such as the patron saint of television. Do you know who that is? St. Clare of Assisi. The reason why she's the patron saint of television is because her and her nuns really kind of started Eucharistic adoration. So they would sit in front of the Eucharist and meditate. So you see, she becomes the patron saint of TV. It's sort of the church's nice way of saying, but what you should be doing, perhaps. Or is it St. Agnes, the patron saint of throat ailments? I can't remember if it's Agatha or Agnes, but she had her throat slit, and for 3 days she didn't die. Those kind of paradoxes. So I think for St. Joseph the Worker, every year we shall not do the Daily Summa. So it's the Daily Summa, as you know, except for the octaves, and now the Feast of St. Joseph the Worker. And also, so the octave of Pentecost is coming up. Don't forget, it won't be done then also. But we're back with our sails full of air and moving forward in our study, and we're going to just try to jump right into it, unless you had anything to say, Joe.
Nope. Violent was the right word to describe it.
It was a violent storm and a violent illness.
Yes, the whole thing was violent.
Everything was very violent. Yeah. Down with the heretics, is what we say. The kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and the violence take it by force. That's why St. Nicholas slapped the heretic, what's his name?
Arius,
yeah. Arius the heretic. I think we'll just start, and if anything comes to mind, I'll continue on. We're in Article 13, folks, page 165, if you have your handy little books. And question 13, moving into, let's see, what would be after that? Question 14, right, Joe?
Right.
Correct me if I'm ever wrong about any of these particulars. I was going to read something about St. Athanasius, but you know what? Go look it up yourself. You have Google. Here we go, top of the page. The cause of things known as said above, Article 8. Since, therefore, that knowledge is necessary, what he knows must also be necessary. Therefore, the knowledge of God is not of contingent things. That is Larry's first salvo. And we know if Larry says it's not, then it probably is. Harrison, welcome to the live show. Yeah. There's much I could say about my friend Harrison, but we have to move on. We're trying to get Joe back to his family, right, Joe?
Right.
Come in and out. Nobody gets hurt. I mean, there may be a little stop off on Pikeville before heading home, but yeah. Objection 2 from Ralph. Further, every conditional proposition of which the antecedent is absolutely necessary must have an absolutely necessary consequent. For the antecedent is to the consequent as principles are to the conclusion. As we've said often, a lot of these philosophical things are started with framing, and it's an obvious statement made at first. And from necessary principles, only a necessary conclusion can follow, as is proved in Poster 1. But this is a true conditional proposition. If God knew that this thing will be, it will be. For the knowledge of God is only of true things. Now, The antecedent conditional of this is absolutely necessary because it is eternal and because it is signified as past. Therefore, the consequent is absolutely necessary. Therefore, whatever God knows is necessary. And so the knowledge of God is not of contingent things. I guess Ralph is trying to say, since God knows it and it is and it has being, then therefore it's not even contingent. We'll see what Thomas has to say about that. Objection 3 from Shimon. Further, everything known by God must necessarily be, because even what we ourselves know must necessarily be. And of course, the knowledge of God is much more certain than ours. But no future contingent things must necessarily be. Therefore, no contingent future thing is known by God. All right, we have the setup. Let's just go straight through to the sed contra and respondio and then deal with those questions when we flip the page and hear his answer to the objections. On the contrary, it is written in Psalm 32, he who hath made the hearts of every one of them, who understandeth all their works, i.e. of men. Welcome, Paul. Blah, 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 blah. Where am I? All his works of men. Now, the works of men are contingent, being subject to free will. Therefore, God knows future contingent things. I don't know that that necessarily refutes their questions, but it is just the sed contra. It's just the argument from authority. Let's dig into the philosophical argument. I answer that, since, as was shown above in Article 9, God knows all things, not only things actual, but also things possible to him and creatures. And since some of these are future contingent to us, it follows that God knows future contingent things. Remember, we're always toggling back and forth between human knowledge and divine knowledge. Oh, there's this metaphor that he gives. I think it's on the next page, but I may skip forward and read it because it shines so much light on the whole question. Let me just go a little further and then I'll look for that metaphor that he gives that really brings everything to light. In evidence of this, we must consider that a contingent thing can be considered in two ways. Here we go. Philosophy is about making distinctions. First, in itself, insofar as it is now in act. And in this sense, it is not considered as future, but as present. We can reflect on something that's actually happening, like us doing the Daily Summa. We can reflect that we might not have done it, as was shown by the past 2 days. So we see that this is, in fact, a contingent reality that's happening, but it's happening right now and we see it. So you can realize that it's contingent in your mind, although it is actually happening in being. That's one way. Neither is it considered as contingent as having reference to one of two terms, but as determined to one. And on account of this, it can be infallibly the object of certain knowledge, for instance, to the sense of sight, as when I see that Socrates is sitting down. That's what I'm saying. You're seeing it happening right now. In another way, a contingent thing can be considered as it is in its cause. And in this way, it is considered as future. Well, the cause will make a future contingent effects. And as a contingent thing not yet determined to one, for as much as a contingent cause has a relation to opposite things, and in this sense, a contingent thing is not subject to any certain knowledge. We don't have certain knowledge of what will happen. A car may suddenly fly through this window, God forbid. Unless none of us get hurt and your insurance is really good, then it would be really good television. So that'd be kind of cool. Hence, whoever knows a contingent effect in its cause only has merely a conjectural knowledge of it, what could or could not happen. Now, God knows all contingent things, not only as they are in their causes, but also as each one of them is actually in itself. And although contingent things become actual successively, nevertheless, God knows contingent things not successfully, as they are in their own being, as we do, but simultaneously. God has full knowledge. As Thomas will later say, his eternal glance is cast upon all things. The reason is because his knowledge is measured by eternity, as is also his being, and eternity, being simultaneously whole, comprises all time, as said above. Hence, all
Turning of the
things that are
page.
in time are present to God from eternity, not only because.
Turning of the page.
The Turning of the Page is sponsored by Spiridon Studios, where you can come and learn pottery. You can learn to use your hands. You can learn to grow. I read your little flyer. I put the word little on it. It seems diminutive, but it was really august and great because did you write that? She did an amazing job.
Yeah, we saw your cute little baby flyer. It was great.
Your cute little flyer. Can they read that flyer on your website? You don't know all that's going on in your business, Paul? Yeah, parts of it. I hope that it's on the website because it was really good. It made me want to do pottery, the way it explained how your interior can be manifest exteriorly, and it can help you to grow. And I can't remember all the exact details of it, but I remember being very impressed with it. But today's episode is sponsored by Spiridon Studios. What is the website? Spiridon. SpiridonStudios.com. Check it out, folks. All right. Hence, all things that are in time are present to God from eternity, not only because he has the types of things present with him, as some say, but because his glance there it is carried from eternity all over things as they are in their presentiality. That's a fancy word. Presentiality. I don't know if he's just making stuff up there, but presentiality. Hence, it is manifest that contingent things are infallibly known by God, inasmuch as they are subject to the divine sight in their presentiality. Yet they are future contingent things in relation to their own causes. Let me see if I can skim through and find that metaphor I was talking about. Here it is. So listen to
feel the
this.
need to be
This is
quiet.
from the next page, and we'll repeat it tomorrow. But this metaphor really casts everything into light about God's glance, presentiality, how God from his upper knowledge can see all contingent things, but we in our time-bound reality cannot see all contingent things. How can that be? What's a good metaphor for that? Listen to it from this next page. And let me put my marker here so I know what I'm doing. Whence to us they cannot be certain, for as much as we know future contingent things as such, but they are certain to God alone, whose understanding is an eternity above time. Just as he who goes along the road does not see those who come after him, whereas he who sees the whole road from a height sees all at once, all traveling on the way. Hence, what is known by us must be necessary, even as it is in itself. But what is future contingent in itself cannot be known by us, just like if you're going along a road. You can't know who's coming around the corner. If somebody were watching from above, or you had a drone perhaps, and you see, it's like a third world country, small road, and there's going around a corner, and you see a large bus that's taking up everything, and you see a little cart coming around, you know that things are about to turn out poorly for the cart. And if you're seeing it from that height, but the person in the cart and the person in the big vehicle cannot know that. Or you can see people in front of you, you can't see people behind you, or you get the idea. But a person who's in a height can see where everyone was on the road and where they're going. Of course, all metaphors limp, but God is seeing that kind of way. He is seeing space-time at one glance and knows where everything will be. And he also knows the possibility, like that car or cart getting hit. He knows that it's going to get hit because that's the nature of the reality. So he knows contingent things, even though they may not even happen. He still knows and sees what is contingent from his knowledge of causes and effects, which is in his nature in himself, seen as one eternal glance. Reply to objection 1. Although the supreme cause is necessary, the effect may be contingent by reason of the proximate contingent cause, just as the germination of a plant is contingent by reason of the proximate contingent cause, although the movement of the sun is the first cause, and it is necessary. So there's contingent causes for the growth of a plant, like flowers, rain, germination of the flowers, and different contingent realities, but the sun, Thomas is saying, is the first cause. So you're seeing even though there's other causes, the first cause is moving the growth of the plant or the tree. And so there's a distinction between a first cause or a first mover of the contingency and also other things acting upon it, like the driver, the engine, the slipperiness of the road. There's numerous contingencies. God knows all of those. Likewise, things known by God are contingent on account of their proximate causes, while the knowledge of God, which is the first cause, is necessary. He is the first cause, and from that, he is able to see and know how all things move and are. Reply to objection 2. Thomas is coming after Ralph. Some say that this antecedent, God knew this contingent to be future, is not necessary, but contingent, because although it is past, still it imports relation to the future. This, however, does not remove necessity from it. For whatever has had relation to the future must have had it, although the future sometimes does not follow. On the other hand, some say that this antecedent is contingent because it is compound of necessary and contingent, as this saying is contingent. Socrates is a white man. But this also is to no purpose, for when we say God knew this contingent to be future, contingent is used here only as a matter of the word and not as the chief part of the proposition. Hence, its contingency is necessary or a necessity has no reference to the necessity or contingency of the proposition or to its being true or false. For it may be just as true that I said, a man is an ass. Like I might say, I would never say of Joe. I would never say that. But like contingently, possibly, I could say that. I mean, it would never happen because that's not in my heart as a first cause.
Never.
But it could happen.
Never, of course.
Level. Heretic. As that I said Socrates runs, or if you say Socrates runs, or God is. And the same applies to necessary and contingent. Hence, it must be said that this antecedent is absolutely necessary. Nor does it follow, as some say, that the consequent is absolutely necessary, because the antecedent is the remote cause of the consequent, which is contingent by reason of the proximate cause. But this is to no purpose, for the conditional would be false were its antecedent the remote necessary cause, and the contingent and the consequent a contingent effect. As, for example, if I said, if the sun moves, the grass will grow. There goes Thomas on one of his long philosophical reels. I have to admit, the first time I read it halfway through, just boggled. Now I've read it for the third time and still boggled. Essentially, there's a lot of stuff that could happen. God knows them all. And there's different senses in which we say something is proximate or something is causal. Therefore, we must reply otherwise, that when the antecedent contains anything belonging to an act of the soul, the consequent must be taken not as it is in itself, but as it is in the soul. For the existence of a thing in itself is different from the existence of a thing in the soul. If I have something within me, like let's say a song, that thing is in me. I know the song. I know my songs. I can play them. There'll be different contingencies depending on which guitar, depending on which group I'm playing to. The crowd affects how the thing is played. But there's an essential knowledge of the thing in the soul, and that song will come forth from that knowledge. With God, it is likewise, except on a much higher and more complete level. For example, when I say that the soul understands, what the soul understands is immaterial, this is to be understood that it is immaterial as it is in the intellect, not as it is in itself. My song that I know is immaterial. Like, let's say it's a song I've never shared with anyone. And there's numerous of those. I know the song. It's sitting right here within me. But no one else knows it except for God, perhaps the great cloud of witnesses. But I know it. It's within me. As soon as I manifest it out into the world and it hits Malchus, it comes down from Hachmut Bina Das on the level of my knowledge, and then out through my emotions, the other sphere wrote, and then enters into this world in my fingers and movement of the guitar strings. The sound waves go out, and then it meets. See, it's time for work. No, it's a Joe meeting. We're supposed to be meeting right now.
Oh. Hey, it's going good, man.
How's everything going with the business?
It's going good.
Cool, good meeting. So yeah, I have it in myself, but then it enters out, and it's going to be different once it hits the material world. But so what the soul understands is immaterial. That is to be understood that it is immaterial as it is in my intellect, not as it is in itself, like when I play it out in the world. Then it becomes, then there's a manifold ways in which it can manifest. Okay. Likewise, if I say, if God knew anything, it will be, the consequent must be understood as it is subject to the divine knowledge, i.e., as it is in its presentiality. So he's saying the same thing, but he's using that term presentiality just to show that God sees it within himself. But for us, it's manifested. The contingencies are manifest like on the road as they're coming to us. But God is still seeing all the possible contingencies. And the final word of this page, and we're trying to do a short one today, so we'll just stop with the final word of this page and then go on to the rest of it tomorrow. And we'll say, remember, guys, all of this is straw. Before I read the last word, all of this is straw. It is just philosophical words and blah, 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 but it is to be meditated on, pondered in your silent time. And as you hear it over and over, more and more, you'll begin to form a schema in your mind, and it'll become more and more rich and real to you, like wood and straw, which fire will be able to be attached to by God's grace. And you will be able to enter into meditation and then finally contemplation as the meek and humble bird under the staircase, as in our logo, which is not up now because we haven't paid for Restream, right?
Yep.
Why didn't you say that in the business meeting just now, Joe?
I don't know.
Good answer. The final word is and. Bye.
That was a good one, dude.
We're done.
Okay, cool.
That was a good one, dude.
Just gotta remember, I'm doing that thing.
Let's go
where
have
I'm
a
letting
pie.
it have a big gap in the middle because we were cutting you off.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure we don't cut you off.
I forgot to look at the last one to see what it looked like at the end.